There it is. He timed it right. Counting
to explode with the left. Oh, and that right, but Davis took off some of the steam of the punch, but still.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It has now been officially announced who Claressa Shields will be facing in her very next fight. She's going to be facing her old buddy, French-owned Crews, early next year in February on the 22nd in a rematch approximately 10 years in the making. They both debuted as professionals against each other way back when in 2016, approximately 10 years ago. Claressa won the fight. Now, a lot has happened since then. They've both accomplished a lot and are now more experienced professionals than they were then. Claressa Shields, 30 years old, the French-owned, who's a few years older at 38. Both fighters are orthodox fighters. Scheduled for 10 rounds in the women's heavyweight division, meaning that it will be French-owned Crews moving up in weight to heavyweight to challenge Claressa for her belts, which, win or lose, should not affect French-owned's status as a champion at her own weight. French-owned certainly a more respectable choice than what it was Claressa was proposing in a previous post. Some sort of a reality TV show, sweepstakes format where ordinary girls challenge each other and the last woman standing gets to challenge Claressa. What was it, $100,000? Just not becoming of what's supposed to be the greatest woman of all times. If you're that fucking great, so should your quality of competition, one would think. Now, French-owned is definitely a more respectable choice than that proposition would have led to. French-owned Crews sports a professional record of 10 wins with 2 losses and no draws, 2 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 12 professional bouts. A pressure fighter, a durable one, a persistent one. And I think that she can push Claressa Shields harder than she's been pushed in a long time. Push her harder than Lonnie Daniels or Danielle Perkins, Vanessa LePage. Last in action in June of this year opposite the ring, Siltali Ortiz, who she beat by way of a majority decision. It was the only fight that she had this year and the only fight that she's had in the last 2. She sat out all of last year and only fought once this one. And some might say that fighting French-owned for a second time is a step up, still a step up from fighting, say, Jade Green, because French-owned Crews beat Jade Green back in December of 2023. Currently on a 2-fight winning streak, this will be the first fight of Claressa Shields' new landmark deal, supposed to be for a value of $8 million spread across 2 years over 4 fights. And this fight kicks off that deal, but in spite of all of that, a lot really hasn't changed. At the helm of the promotion, it will be Dimitri Salita, who's been promoting Claressa her entire pro boxing career. The fight will likely be on DAZN, where Salita's fights happen now. A lot really hasn't changed. Just before this announcement, I saw Claressa Shields mincing words with Jade Green. Jade saying that Claressa's offering girls peanuts on the dollar. She's always talking about advancing the sport for women's boxing, but she's really just advancing herself while offering girls next to nothing for a fight. So you do have to wonder, what does French-owned Crews stand to make for this thing? Her and Claressa Shields are good friends. Did Claressa take care of her friend, or is she just supposed to be happy that she's getting the opportunity? In any event, they're set to lock horns for the second time, February of next year, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches.
With Zuffa Boxing, we are planning to launch our first fight on January 23rd, which is the night before our first UFC fight on Peace Guy. So back-to-back nights, big weekend for TKO to say the least. And the way that we're going to build value here is, on one hand, you've got this partnership that we have with our friends in Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, have been spectacular partners. Spectacular, right? They say what they mean and they do what they say. And we're going to run it like we do the UFC, bring the whole platform in and sell tickets and sell media rights and sell partnerships and marketing and ultimately consumer products and licensing off of our brand and our individual fighters, and ultimately monetize with site fees the way we do UFC and WWE. Real opportunity there. And to do that, as you know, we're not taking any risk. We're being paid a management fee, and we're going to build firm value. And in the space of a couple of years, after hitting some thresholds that we're well on our way to hitting, we will roughly be at about 50-50 on ownership of that JV.
That was Mark Shapiro, who revealed that Zuffa Boxing is planning its first show as part of its new venture with Paramount Plus on January 23rd, the Friday before TKO launches their new UFC deal on Paramount Plus. There's been a lot of chatter around this. Finance expert Andrew Lokanoth said Larry Ellison will control TikTok, Paramount, Warner Brothers, CNN, CBS, HBO, and almost every major cable channel. This will be the most dangerous media consolidation in American history. To which boxing scribe Sean Zettel responded, just keep this in mind when Nick Khan and TKO brag about having the only network deal in America for boxing. What I would say to Sean is, it wasn't anything that Dana White or TKO did that costed PBC their Fox deal or their Showtime deal. No, they were out of the door long before we got here. ESPN was always headed in that same direction for the same reason, because there are inadequacies in this industry that need to be addressed, and rather than addressing them, you want to focus on TKO. You want to focus on Zuffa, ignoring what the real problems were and what they still are. Wasteful spending for what are diminished returns, overinflated egos from people in the boxing industry that don't generate anywhere near as much as what they seem to cost. These are the real problems. This is a part of why the networks walked away. I mean, do you think that when the PBC was on Fox, if they were delivering them the kind of ratings that they wanted, and while they were on Showtime, same deal, that they would have left? This is a numbers game. So for the numbers that it's costing those platforms to stay in the boxing industry versus what boxing is giving them back, it wasn't worth it, Sean. I can only stress the same point that I've been making, that you're so focused on TKO as if they are the scourge of boxing, the bane, when boxing had its own problems long before TKO was even a thing, long before we got here. And those problems still exist. He said, keep this in mind when Nick Khan and TKO brag about having the only network deal, but whose fault is it that 2 years on from Showtime's departure, PBC doesn't have a new broadcaster? Whose fault is that, Sean? Because TKO hasn't even launched yet, so you can't blame them. And what about Top Rank's problems on ESPN? If they don't get a new broadcaster, what, is that TKO's fault too? How many more times do I gotta say this? Boxing was already headed in this direction long before they decided to launch TKO. It was always going to be this way, and if what you're worried about is that TKO's got too many powerful friends, too many ways to perhaps corner the market, I think you're giving them too much credit. I think you're manufacturing problems to avoid addressing the real ones, because things in regular boxing, outside of what's going to be Zuffa Boxing's bubble, things in regular boxing were already pretty bad. But you're so pressed about what Zuffa is going to pay the Vito Milnicki's of the world, you should be asking yourself, the moment that PBC became a network free agent, why didn't the networks jump all over them? Why didn't NBC?
Are you really going to ask that?
They were already on NBC, Sean. They were already on Fox. They were already on Showtime. Do you not think that track record matters? Do you think that you can just burn through cash, fuck off network money, giving little in return, and this is just supposed to go on? Eventually, the networks are going to close their doors to you. And so they have. What the boxing world should be asking themselves is, if Paramount Plus wanted to stay in boxing, then why didn't they just keep the PBC? Why didn't they just bring it over? Paramount is the parent company of Showtime. they are the ones who absorbed them. And if all this time they still had an interest in live sport, combat sports, why didn't they just stick with the PBC? Wasteful spending for diminished returns. A track record of failures. It's a very obvious answer. So that as soon as a Zuffa Boxing decides to launch, don't you see how fast they were able to get a broadcast partner? Same ones that gave PBC the axe. What that should communicate to you is that contrary to the opinions of a few, things staying the way that they are, it's not sustainable. As a business, you always hear people in the boxing industry say that boxing is a business with no idea how to run one, because just burning through cash, making it your aim to always make off like a bandit with the network's money, because that's where it's been coming from, that does not make for a sustainable business, and that cannot go on forever. At some point, the egos have to get in check, and if they can't, they can check out at the door. It's not complicated. You're all arguing about whatever amendments are being made to the Ali Act as if things are perfect the way that they are, when they are far from it. Light years apart, and what I'm seeing from the people in the industry against Zuffa's entry into the spaces, they don't want order. They don't want structure. They want for a $2 fighter to be able to ask for exorbitant amounts of money. Ridiculous money. Wasting everyone's time. The networks in particular that are the ones providing the cash. No more. That's what I see. The people rallying against Zuffa, who haven't even launched yet, don't want order in the chaos. They don't want structure. They don't want a ceiling for what a fighter can ask for, but perhaps there needs to be one in light of all the wasteful spending that we've been seeing over the years. Too worried about Zuffa, man. Boxing already had problems long before Zuffa decided to launch, and when they launch. I'm not actually rooting for Zuffa to fail. I'm curious to see what they can do, given what resources they have. But a part of me is a cynic to where, even with all those resources, what Zuffa will lack is a sense of familiarity, which is pretty important in the sport of boxing. I'm talking about to the fans. You know, the fans, particularly the American ones, don't care about a fighter that they're not familiar with. So they're set to launch in the month of January, where a lot of things are going to be going on involving a lot of familiar fighters. Amanda Serrano is going to be fighting. Xander Zayas is going to be fighting. It was recently announced that Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez, they will be facing each other. Subriel Matias' title defense against Dalton Smith is set to go on. There is a lot going on in the month of January to where, yeah, Zuffa's launch is going to get some attention, but not as much as that other stuff. Giving them a little bit too much credit, even with all of their resources. What you can't do is force people to watch, and if they watch, you can't force them to stay. They have to actually want to, and for them to want to, you have to put forward a quality product. See, I don't want Zuffa Boxing to fail. I'm curious to see what they can put together and what they can do, but I know that even with all of the resources they have and all the money they have behind them, boxing is a different beast. You still need people to watch what you're putting out for it to be successful, and there's no guarantee that they are going to. So perhaps Sean should focus on the real problems in regular boxing instead of being so focused on Zuffa and what Zuffa is doing. We don't even know if Zuffa's gonna work. Just in keeping with the theme of promoters and networks and all that kind of stuff, Eddie Hearn expects Matchroom to extend DAZN broadcast deal. Matchroom Boxing frontman Eddie Hearn has confirmed that they are likely to extend their deal with broadcaster DAZN. Matchroom first put pen to paper with DAZN in 2018, signing a 5-year deal to exclusively stream their U.S. shows on the platform. The promotional outfit would later decide to work entirely on DAZN after their expiry of their contract with longtime partner Sky Sports in the UK. Since Matchroom made the jump to the platform, DAZN have added Frank Warren's Queensberry and Callie Anise Sauerland's Misfits Boxing. Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy has also been exclusive to the platform. Matchroom signed a 3-year extension to their broadcast deal in 2023, which is due to expire next year. There's just no reason to leave. If you're Eddie Hearn and you made the decision to start working with DAZN all the way back there in 2018, where people were calling you a buffoon. And you're not going to make it in America because DAZN is going to go under. DAZN is not going to last. Seeing all those same individuals worse for wear now. All those naysayers. You have to feel a sense of self-accomplishment and vindication. Streaming provider Netflix have made a move into boxing in recent years, mainly through Jake Paul's MVP, with his upcoming bout with Anthony Joshua on December 19th, the latest of Paul's fights to be streamed on the platform. Hearn has recently had his dealings with Netflix too, after they aired a 6-part series named Matchroom, The Greatest Showman, that detailed the day-to-day dealings of the company and Eddie's relationship with Hearns' father, Barry Hearn. Could Hearns' Matchroom and Netflix be working together in a much bigger capacity as their broadcast provider in the future? No. I mean, obviously, we've just done our show with them, 6 episodes on Netflix. We're exclusive to DAZN, Hearn told Boxing Scene. There will be an announcement about our future in due course. We're in a great position, got the best stable in boxing. Obviously, I'm the best promoter in the world. So yeah, we're really happy with DAZN. It's allowed us to grow globally and have a one-stop shop for fight fans all around the world. So it is likely that Matchroom will extend their current deal with DAZN? Yes, I would say so, said Hearn. Going all in with DAZN is what allowed Eddie Hearn to enhance his profile from a very successful UK-based promoter to a global promoter, an international promoter that does shows anywhere from the United Kingdom to the United States with fighters from all corners of the world. A lot of that starts with his partnership with DAZN. Took Matchroom from a successful UK-based company to a global company, a global brand that is recognizable to most any and every boxing fan. That starts with DAZN. You know, Matchroom and Golden Boy arrived on the platform at or around the same time. But it was Eddie Hearn who quickly became the front man for that platform, to the point where some Americans thought it was his baby. It was his platform. I remember those days. To where all these years later, it makes absolutely no sense to leave. Matchroom has grown with DAZN, and DAZN has grown with Matchroom. It's been a fruitful partnership, and there are very few entities out there that can provide Matchroom with the stability that DAZN is providing them with. The only one that I can think of is Netflix. But Netflix doesn't seem to have an interest in doing regular boxing matches on a regular schedule. That if there were someone out there who could compete with DAZN, it would be them. For Matchroom's Hand in Marriage, that's the only ones I can think of that could do bigger and better than DAZN would for Matchroom. All things aside, it's perfectly understandable why they mean to stay there. If I had one critique of Matchroom and DAZN, just one, and it's not even a big one, it's they need to do a better job of advertising what they've got outside of their platform, because if you're not already a DAZN subscriber, odds are you're not going to bump into their stuff. It's not like the days of basic cable packages where you get that spillover from people just flicking through the channels. That doesn't really happen anymore. So DAZN needs to allocate some resources to advertising their wares off-platform to raise even more awareness. But like I said, that's a small critique. More of a suggestion, really. I see no reason for Matchroom to go anywhere else. DAZN is really the home of global boxing.